Hello, and welcome back to Thinkr Out Loud, a podcast series by Thinkr Marketing Group. Each episode, one of our in-house experts will share insights to help you understand the many moving pieces of a marketing strategy and how they work together. My name is Shaylin Hamilton, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Thinkr Marketing. With me today in the booth is my carpool buddy, longtime colleague, and Thinkr web developer, Ryan Ahrens.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy to have you in the booth. Ryan is an immensely creative and talented designer and web developer who brings over 20 years of experience to the team. He began his career with a publishing company designing and building websites in the financial industry, and he grew through roles as a freelancer and with agencies. He's an expert at designing and developing for optimal user experience across all kinds of both creative and digital assets. Today, I'm pleased to have him in the booth to talk us through a key piece of the web design and development process called wireframing, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So Ryan, tell us, what is a wireframe? How do you explain it to somebody who just might not know?
So basically, a wireframe is kind of like a skeleton or blueprint for a website. So before you start, doing your design mockup, you would start with like your initial wireframe or just a very bare bones sketch of your layout, your composition, and how content is going to be prioritized on the page.
Okay, so it would fall in the process of web development, definitely near the beginning.
Yeah.
So
definitely like the first step with a web development is doing the sitemap. And then you would go and do the wireframe, because the wireframe is essentially like a kind of like a visual representation of that sitemap.
Perfect. Why is wireframing so important?
Wireframing is important because it allows you to identify usability issues early on in the project. So before you start designing or developing the site, it allows you to take a critical look at the site structure and to make sure that you've got your that your content's organized properly and that there aren't any usability issues.
Okay, so from a developer perspective, it helps you kind of save time on any major changes, perhaps?
Yeah, like it allows you to make changes early on, like because it's easier to make a change in the wireframe process than it is when you're after you've done all the designing and spent hours making a page look really good, and then find out that you have to completely do it all over again.
Yeah, that's fantastic too. And for people who are maybe looking to have a website built, it's good for them to know and ask maybe if their developers are using this process, right? Because if it's saving you time, it's saving them money.
Exactly.
Because it takes you less time to make a change.
Yeah, because I think a wireframe is sort of like when you're doing a sketch or a drawing, you would start with your rough idea, your rough sketch, and start sketching your perspective, your proportions, get your composition right. And then you would slowly start adding more details. And so it's a lot easier to make corrections in the beginning than
later.
Than later. So
That's good. Well, I'm glad we build it in. I'm guessing over your career, you've worked on projects where the wireframe step was included and some where it wasn't. What's been your experience on those kind of projects? Anything stand out, or do you have a preference now that you've kind of been through both?
Yeah. I mean, I actually didn't start wireframing until starting to work at Thinkr. We had always gone straight to design. And I usually start with a rough sketch on paper first anyways, like whether I'm designing a page layout or a logo or a website, I'll do some quick, it's a great idea to do some quick sketches first. So I tend to really prefer the wireframing process.
You do?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like it is a good piece of the puzzle to put in between. And I too have worked on projects as well where we've done the design first right after kind of outlining what we're looking for on the site. And then we move right into build. And it does, even from an account management point of view, create a lot of delays or maybe hiccups when you're trying to operate without that blueprint.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Because basically what I do is I do a majority of my research before I do the wireframing phase, like during that phase. Because like I'll look into the client's existing website if they have one. I'll look into their competition and look at their industry as a whole. And then I'll also start looking at functionality and doing research into getting my creative inspiration and really start putting all of those ideas together and get a sense of like, what direction I want the website to go in, what's the purpose. And it's really great to do all of that before you start designing, because if I have new ideas, I can pitch them to the team and we can pitch them to the client. And we can get all that work hashed out before we start developing or before we start designing anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. I bet clients really appreciate
Yeah.
that too. They do. Fantastic. Do you have to provide a wireframe for both desktop and mobile layouts? And isn't that double the work?
Yes, it's double the work, but it is very important to do both because both will have different user experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And you could simply do like take your desktop and then stack everything from mobile and call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is you're not really paying attention to how that content is really organized, because what could happen is, if you just simply stack everything, if you have a lot of content on the page, then that's a lot of scrolling.
When you get to the mobile version.
Yeah, when you're on the mobile version.
Oh,
so
right.
what may happen is you get scrolling fatigue. People may not read through all of the information, or maybe certain bits of content should be higher up on the page than what it is on desktop.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both different beasts, but it's very important to hash all of that stuff out. Yeah,
that makes sense to me. And in terms of desktop and mobile, is there one you start with? Where do you begin first?
Lately, we've been beginning with mobile first because I think it was as of 2016, mobile search usage has surpassed desktop usage.
Yeah.
So it's important to focus on the majority of what clients are actually, or what people are using.
I wonder what that number is now.
Yeah, I'm really
I mean,
curious.
in 2016, it was definitely high.
Yeah.
I bet it's worse or better or more.
Probably better, yeah.
Now I'm not sure what
Yeah.
to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Going from mobile first so that you know and you can expand on it in a desktop version.
Exactly.
Okay. What tips would you give to a developer who's looking to maybe add this into their process? And do they need any special tools? Is there an investment involved?
They don't really need any special tools. I mean, a wireframe could be as simple as just a sketch on paper, but we use Adobe XD, which is great for creating an interactive wireframe. So it allows you to allows your client and your team to browse the wireframe as if it's a website. So you can see the user flow from page to page and how they're interacting with that content. And they can get better feedback that way. Because typically in the past, we would just do, I was doing everything in Photoshop. And then we would send a JPEG to the client. And it's kind of hard for them to visualize how that's actually going to look on the page and what the, like the viewport, like how much how much of the page they're going to see on the screen.
Yeah.
And so this way they get a pretty accurate representation of how that could actually look.
Sure. And getting to play with it and navigate around a little bit. It does provide the feel that like a static image wouldn't.
Yeah.
I love that. So any tips that you'd give to a developer who's looking to roll that process out or to upgrade that part of their process, or just sort of give it a try and see what works best for you?
Yeah, I would say start with like a very low fidelity mockup. Like we used to, you can do high fidelity ones where you've got more images and more branded elements. But I found that going with a lower fidelity one works best because one issue that we had was because I started out doing high fidelity mockup or wireframes, and the problem with that is that they looked a little too polished, a little too clean, and we weren't getting the right feedback from the clients because they were too focused on the look of the wireframe and the design. And even though you explain to them, this is just a wireframe, it's not a design mockup, but they weren't giving us the feedback that we wanted. They were looking more at how it looked rather than paying attention to the content and the structure of the page.
Fair enough. It's that, like, don't think about an alligator.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking about an alligator.
Exactly.
Okay. So removing that, those design elements and keeping it fairly simple, streamlined that for us. Fantastic. Yeah. That's an excellent tip, actually. You can get a little lost in the sauce of it when there's a lot on the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand. Fantastic. Well, that's kind of the end of my questions, really, about the wireframing process. As a piece of the web development puzzle, it's pretty critical.
Yes.
From both the agency or the developer side and for the client, it sounds like keeping things. I mean, it's always good to have a plan, right?
It is.
Before you start building anything.
Yeah, and the wireframe is great because it really gives everyone an idea of what the website's going to supposed to function, how it's supposed to work, what it's supposed to do. Keeps everyone in the loop.
Keeps everyone in the loop. Keeps everybody in line, maybe.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for walking us through that process. It's not everybody really knows or has access to this kind of information, which is why we do this and why we have our experts on the podcast to talk through these pieces. And listeners, we're going to be doing more of these. We want to give you the inside look and get inside the brains, the beautiful brains of our developers and digital team and all the experts we have here. To dig a little deeper inside of that beautiful brain, Ryan, I have a couple of maybe personal questions. Is that okay?
All right, sure.
Fantastic. What is your perfect cup of coffee?
Well, I'm pretty easygoing, pretty simple. So just as black as the night sky is good for me. With a little bit of sugar.
A little bit of sugar. A little sweetness. I get it. Okay. 2 website trends that you're loving right now.
Right now, I'm loving using mobile, like a mobile menu style on desktop.
So what does that look like? It's a lot of clients say, I'm going to say it, the little hamburger.
Yeah, little hamburger menu. But what that does actually is, one, it creates this, the similar user experience, whether it's on desktop or mobile. So things are familiar. And another thing, when you have that on desktop, it gives you a little bit more room to be creative and with how you're laying out your navigation on desktop versus mobile. So now that you've got the whole screen to deal with, like typically you would do like a traditional navigation menu, you would have your main navigation and then maybe some drop downs or something.
A few drop downs.
Yeah. So this way you can maybe display all of that information on the page all at once on desktop. And it just gives you a little bit more breathing room for doing something creative.
Fantastic. So kind of that mobile element as a trend you're loving. Any others?
I would say Newmorphism as a design property principle right now. It's
Listeners, you can't see, but my eyebrows went all the way up. Can you explain that to me? What does that mean?
So it's sort of a hot trend right now. So you know, we typically had like flat design for a while. And now Newmorphism is sort of an evolved version of flat design. So instead of everything being flat, you've got a little bit more shadows, a little bit more embossed elements and such. The only issue I see with that is with a lot of these subtle shadows and subtle embossing, it's not very good for accessibility. So I've been taking lately like little bits that I like and then incorporating them into some of my designs just to keeping accessibility in mind.
That's
important. There's a good contrast between like text and different elements.
Sure. That's a good note too. Keeping accessibility in mind and maybe another topic of discussion for another day, but making sure we incorporate that into all of our web builds is kind of a critical element.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, how about 3 things you cannot live without? Only 3.
Only 3. Well, definitely coffee.
Yeah. Refer to question 1.
Yeah, exactly. Refer to question 1. Probably like my PS5 and Switch, probably, and my phone. A little addicted to technology there.
That's okay. You're in the right role for that, so we're okay with it. Your top 4 favorite songs.
Favorite songs. Well, definitely, I'm a huge fan of Goldfrapp, so I love Strict Machine by them. Bizarre Love Triangle by New Order. And I would say Yoga by Bjork.
Okay. All these are going to have to go on the playlist for the carpool.
Yeah, exactly. And probably Lose Your Smile by Beach House.
Wow. Okay. I didn't expect any of those answers. I thought for sure there was going to be a few of our from our 80s playlist that we love. But
well, no, it's New Order. It's from the 80s.
Yeah, okay. Fair. There's that. And I guess my last question, Ryan, is a nonprofit or a charity that you support?
Probably the AIDS Network of Hamilton.
Of Hamilton, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm on the executive of a bowling league and also on the executive of our bowling tournament. So the AIDS Network we're a big supporter of them. So all of the money that we raise from our tournament goes towards the AIDS Network.
Oh, fantastic. A wonderful cause and an important organization for sure.
Yes.
Well, Ryan, that's all I have for you today. I want to thank you very, very much for sitting down with me and being in the booth.
Thank you.
And listeners, thank you very much for tuning in again to the podcast. We do very much appreciate it. Once again, my name is Shaylin Hamilton. This is Thinkr Out Loud. If you have any questions about what you've heard today when it comes to wireframing and what that means for your project, or any questions at all, really, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can find all our contact information on the website, thinkrmarketing.com. And until next time, bye-bye.